Okay, so NMS is a global management consulting firm with a focus on business transformation and strategic growth. And unlike other consulting firms, we provide the expertise of big firm consultants without the high costs. So we have offices open now in Berlin, Frankfurt, London, as well as Paris. And our focus in Europe is on strategy as well as transformation, specifically for the SME market. So this includes a broad spectrum of strategic, operational, and technology services, which include, of course, business turnaround, change management, digital transformation, interim support, and quite a few others. I think that's enough about us, though. I think I'll, without further ado, pass over the mic to Harry.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Lydia, for setting things up. It's great to be here. Well, good morning, everybody. This morning, I'd like to talk about operational turnaround based on my own experiences. In my view, this differs from financial recovery or financial reconstruction, as it is often called, where new money is injected into the business, quite often through an insolvency process, or the business is sold. The agenda this morning I'd like to go through is, first of all, define business turnaround as I see it, and then talk about some of the reasons for businesses going into decline, some examples, look at the main requirements for a successful turnaround, and then I'd like to go through the NMS 5-point recovery plan, turnaround plan. And throughout, I'll be referring to one or two case studies. So looking at business turnaround. So for the purpose of this morning, I am defining business turnaround to be where, if no remedial actions were taken, the company's performance would deteriorate to such a point that recovery would be impossible. So the underlying message is that the sooner we start to make the changes, the better the chances of survival will be. Looking at some of the reasons for a business decline, and these are just some examples. We all know that most companies face a crisis at some point in their life, and managing any business has its risks and can be a continual battle. Imagine the scenario. You've lost sales, you've let some staff go, you're under pressure from the bank, or likely to be so. Cash is very, very tight. You may have invested personally. It may be a family business. You need to find new customers, and the future is uncertain. So looking at the various examples, gradual decline to me is the most typical, and is caused by a number of factors, including changes in the marketplace, lack of demand for the company's products, or the products themselves becoming outdated. Sometimes there's a lack of change, and sometimes we see complacency in the management team. Sudden decline, and this is typical in today's COVID climate, but otherwise it could be caused by a bad debt. It could be that customers have simply gone elsewhere. It may be changes in legislation. It could even be the loss of a key member of staff, which is something that is quite common in a family business. Overtrading is where a company is growing very, very quickly, but does not have the working capital to support that growth, and can soon run out of cash if it's not being paid quickly enough, or if lead times are particularly long. It can typically affect entrepreneurial companies in very high growth sectors, who will often take on more debt to support growth, or sometimes use invoice discounting. Mediocre performance, sometimes referred to as zombie companies, is where the company just about manages to survive month to month, makes some profits one month, a loss the next month. It's always struggling for cash, but is reluctant to change, and eventually it does run out of cash. So I'd like to talk about the life cycle of a business. My personal view is that most companies do go through a typical lifestyle, and each requires a different management style. We start off with growth, where we have the entrepreneur. So we have an entrepreneurial style of management. Somebody's leading the business who likes to build, likes to grow. The sort of person who cooks an excellent meal in the kitchen, but doesn't like doing the washing up. They'll leave a wake behind them. We reach a point where the company's grown, and then we need to think about consolidation, and we need a more structured approach. And typically, the entrepreneur will take on somebody to fulfill that role rather than do it themselves. And that might be the financial director, for example. We then come to a point where there is a crisis in the business, there's a problem. We need a different skill set. We need somebody who likes change. And typically turnaround directors, managers like change. They thrive on change. They're not particularly good at staying there for the long term. And in my view, probably they're at their peak in the first 6 months of an assignment. So you need different skill sets for different stages in the business's life. Talking about financial recovery or financial reconstruction, on its own, I believe it does not work. It can be seen as a quick fix. Just putting money into a business on its own will not particularly save the business. If nothing has changed, all that happens is the company ends up back in resuscitation. If we put a company back on the shelf and the shelf is unsafe, then it will fall down. I'd now like to talk about the NMS 5-point turnaround plan. This is something that I developed over a number of years through the UK Business Recovery Scheme, which I designed and managed on behalf of the UK government and was funded by them. It gives the turnaround some structure. It's not the definitive answer. It is an approach. It's an approach that we have used and used very effectively. But remember, in any turnaround situation, you also have to be creative. As businesses are fluid, dynamic things, and things change and evolve, and every situation and every environment is different. There is no one size fits all. There's no one model that fits all in a turnaround. We've got to react to the situation that we're in. Also, this approach is iterative, so you will complete it, then use it again and again in different functions of the business, marketing and sales, operations, etc. So going to the first step, which is the diagnostic. To me, this is the most important step in the turnaround, to really understand the problems. And unfortunately, we don't always do that. We will often go for the quick fix. Here's a problem, and there's a solution. We should use the technique that our children do. You know, when they frustratingly ask us sometimes, "Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy?" Until you reach a point where you're saying, "Well, because I said so." And it's the same with business. We go through those 5 whys, continually ask those questions. Why is this happening? So a simple example, we've got a cash flow problem. Why have we got a cash flow problem? Because our customers are not paying us on time. Why are they not paying us on time? They're not paying us on time because they're not happy with some quality issues. Why do we have quality issues? Because we've got people in operations who are not fully trained, etc. Or we've got material issues with our supplier. So we continue to drill down until we get to the real problem. Once we find the real problem, we can then resolve it, and we've got a better chance of making a successful turnaround. The next stage is the planning and create a window of time. We create the window of time simply to give us the breathing space to plan the business. Creating the window of time involves talking to creditors, talking to banks, other lenders, talking to customers, talking to suppliers, to give ourselves breathing space to take off the pressure. It will involve some short-term measures to actually reduce expenditure, for example, cutting out overtime, things like that. So it gives us breathing space to plan. The plan is key. This is not a business plan. This is not a 50-page document that we stick in the bottom drawer and forget about. This is a plan that's in the hearts and minds of management and all the staff and all the people in the business. It's a living thing, and it will change and evolve as a turnaround moves forward. But it is key, and it is important that time is spent on this planning process. The next stages are implementation and management. To implement, we need to empower people. This is about step change. Continuous improvement does not work in a turnaround situation. We're talking about radical change. We're talking about thinking about the business model itself. You know, why are we selling all these products? Are the products, which products are making money? Which customers are the most profitable? You know, which market should we be in? What is our model? Look at our structure and make some changes. It is radical change. It is step change. Otherwise, we'll not be successful. Managing it will not be easy because we will have problems. The plan will not be achieved fully, as things will fall short. That always happens. We've got to be prepared for that. The key thing is to understand that and be able to react to those situations as they evolve. So in my view, turnaround always needs, in my own experience, this is three things: management, time, and money. And if I look at these individually, first of all, looking at management and the need to change. Turnaround cannot be achieved without change. That goes without saying. It will not happen. We both need to think differently, but we also need to be different. And that means we've got to change the culture. Now, in my view, you can only change the culture from the top. You can't bring in an advisor to change the culture. You can't change it from the bottom. If you look at a family business, for example, in a family business, the culture of the business is that of the family. It is the family values, the family ethics, the family morals, etc. That's what drives a business. And so it is in any business. And the culture is driven from the top. So if we want to change the culture, we've got to start with the people at the top. Objectivity. People often say, you've got to think outside the box. Well, sometimes it's difficult to do that when you're actually sitting in the box and the lid is shut. We all know, I'm sure, that some of our best thoughts about our businesses are when we're out walking the dog, sitting on the beach, or 4 o'clock in the morning when we wake up and, there's a great idea. We've got to get outside the business. We've got to talk to other people. There are business mentors, there's non-executive directors who are worth taking on, who can be very objective because they're with the business, but they're not in the business. But there are also various business support networks, particularly right across Europe. In most regions, there are support networks which are there to signpost you to help and support. And of course, there are the likes of myself, business transformation and turnaround specialists who work in these areas. We're always there to offer advice and to carry out an initial counselling session. And then you may have your own advisors, your accountants, lawyers. So it is important to talk to people, whether it's friends, family, or professional advisors. Talk to people and get other people's views. Taking advice. I believe some managers often feel that they should have all the answers. I'm the guy at the top, if people look up to me, I've got to have all the answers. It's my job. If I'm going outside the business for advice, then that's a sign of weakness. Well, it is not. It's a sign of good, strong, robust management. That's using the resources that are available, whether they're in the company or outside the company. So taking advice is good management. But remember, you manage your advisors, they don't manage you. Top-down bottom approach is one I use, which I think is key in a turnaround. It's about engaging with staff, and it's about what I've referred to before about empowerment. Starting with leadership, it is the role of senior management to lead. It is generals that win wars, and that's what we're there to do. Managers are there to lead, to inspire, and to direct, to develop the strategy. And when they're doing that, to consult with all employees. And by consultation, I don't mean simply communicating. I mean more than that. I mean counselling, asking views, getting views, gathering information. If you employ good people, you don't employ good people to tell them what to do. You employ good people to start telling you what to do. So we consult with people, we get their views, and then we empower them. We empower them, but we need to give them the skills. So looking at the other side, from bottom up, then the people that are running this business, that are driving it, that are delivering, they're the ones with the skills and the knowledge. So if we empower them, they're then in a position to modify the strategy and to influence the leadership and the direction of the business. So by taking this top-down, bottom-up approach, we can come we can get into the right direction for the business. The overriding most important factor in this whole thing is about leadership, but also about three other key words. Communication, communication, and communication is key in a successful turnaround. Right. Money. Money, as I've said before, will not on its own solve the problems. We can get money from within the business and from without. Typically, we can use things like invoice factoring, which can be difficult if you are distressed. Invoice factoring basically is borrowing against our debtor book and borrowing against our sales invoices. We can go to private equity firms, venture capitalists, and other private investors, etc. But again, we've got to have a convincing story to tell. We can take on more debt. Well, debt's got to be serviced. In some regions throughout Europe, there are grants available, but sometimes can be difficult if a company is troubled with cash flow. And of course, we can go to our customers and ask them for payments in advance, which sometimes might happen, often not. But you know, if we are creative, we can get money from within the business, and through order to cash, cost cutting, pricing, costing, etc. But by being creative, we can think about different ways of doing that. And a couple of examples. One is a company in Wales I was involved with in a turnaround. It manufactured checkouts for supermarkets. The lead time was 12 weeks, and the last 2 weeks were in production. So production only had 2 weeks at the end. I'm always late, always last minute fixes on the checkouts before they went out. So it was always in a rush. So we carried out some process mapping, looked at where the delays were, the inefficiencies, which were in the drawing office, estimating, etc. And we cut back the lead time from 12 weeks to 8 weeks. That meant that we invoiced 1 month early, and the company had a significant injection of cash. Another example was, again, engineering company, manufacturing company, who bought steel. They were always what you call a zombie company, making a bit of profit 1 month and lost the next month, but always struggling for cash and always going to the private equity owners asking for some more money, a bit like Oliver, more please. And the private equity firm didn't want to do that. I walked around the factory with the production director and said, how many of these products do you make every week? 47%, he said. We make every week, and we ship them within 7 days. And the company had invoice discounting, so I could draw down on that. So I then said, well, we'll create a standard product line. We'll not move any machines. We'll create a standard product line. And I went to the steel manufacturers and said, can you give me £50,000 of extra credit, and I'll give it you back within a week, within 2 weeks. And they agreed, reluctantly, they agreed. So with the £50,000, I bought £50,000 of steel and then produced it. And then because the market was 100%, shipped it at £100,000, paid the steel supplier £50,000 after I'd drawn it down from invoice discounting on the 7th day, and then put £50,000 into the bank to fund the working capital. That one thing alone helped to save that company. So what I'm saying is, let's be creative, because sometimes you don't need to go outside to get money. You can do it from internally. Time is key, and there are two elements to time. There's a duration itself, and you can't do a turnaround in 5 minutes. You can't do it in 5 months. The fastest I've done was a web offset printing company. It was in 6 months. We got it cash generative when I was with KPMG, but really it took another 18 months to actually say this company was secure. So it does take time. It can be 12 months, it could be 18 months, it could be 2 years, typically. And then there's the time of management, the amount of time we put into this. If we don't put time into it, it will not happen. You know, senior management have got to devote most of their time to this, or if they haven't got the time, then they need to bring somebody in to actually do that. That could